Amidst all that Ronaldo mania, will there be people asking those questions? Does he actually make the team better?
He does make the team better. We a few weeks ago said on here we thought that would win the title this season. I had Manchester United second, you had them third. I think he makes them more likely to win the title than I thought 3 weeks ago. Something inside me tells me that I don't think he'll quite make them the team that will win the title this season. Some gentleman who was driving me in, and I've always ignored the sort of Ronaldo-Messi question. I don't think we've ever done it on this programme because I always see it as being sort of like a bit of a fantasy, and they both need celebrating. But a guy asked me the question, who would you bring off the bench? He first asked me out of any player in history. If you were a manager, which I won't be, but if you were a manager and you had substitutes behind you and you could pick any player in history to come off the bench in their peak to win you a game with 10 minutes to go and you only had one substitution left, who would it be? And I thought, it would be Cristiano Ronaldo. It would be absolutely Cristiano Ronaldo. And I looked at his goal breakdown and thought of, he can score with his left foot, his wrong foot. He can score with his right foot. He can score from distance. He's probably the best poacher now in world football. He can score with penalties. And if you stick it in the box and hang it up there, he'll go and score with a header. And he might even score with a free kick. So if you think about impact of a player and you think about what is the greatest player of all time, and I've never really answered this question with great things, but you just look at these stats here. You know, his right foot, so let's use this one. His right foot is obviously the majority of his goals, but that is a phenomenal amount of goals with his wrong foot. It's an outrageous amount of headers, absolutely outrageous. So many goals inside the box, but a lot outside the box. Penalties, again, a massive amount of penalties, 125. Hat-tricks, free kicks. And it actually took me to a point by how we were going to discuss Cristiano Ronaldo tonight. I do think that he would be the player in the history of football I've watched that I would bring off the bench if I thought I had to have someone win a football match for me.
So what does that mean?
To me, I think, in answering that question that I was asked by a gentleman this morning on the way in, I do think he's the greatest football player that has ever lived. Now, he's shaking his head with that. I do think he's the greatest football player that's ever lived. That is not a bias, that is me just looking at answering that question of who I think I would want to trust to win me a football match most, in the most different ways, and who is the most complete player. Now, if you add to that, if you just let me finish, if you add to that the fact that, you know, you've got Ronaldo and Messi's, so just look at Messi's goals and Ronaldo's goals, because it always comes back to this. And look, there's no doubt that Messi scored an obscene amount of goals, is a ridiculous player. And it's a little bit of a hypothetical question. But Ronaldo, the two big differences for me, or three big differences...
Because it's incredibly similar.
It is. Apart from the wrong-footed goals, the headers, which Ronaldo scored 4 or 5 times more, Ronaldo scored probably, I think, 30–40% more with his wrong foot, and he scored more penalties. So it just took me to a point whereby he was more complete in terms of the big end of the most important part of the game. And then to a point of the last point, which I think is the most important thing that tips it over the edge even more, is that international record of the most international goals ever. The fact that he's won 5 Champions Leagues with teams that aren't as good as Messi's team. You know, the Ballon d'Ors are very similar. Messi's won more league titles with that Barcelona team. But I just feel that the international goals record and the Champions Leagues, aligned with the variety of goals that he scores, even though they're very similar, takes me to think that he is the greatest football player of all time.
He's managed to have this debate all by himself.
No,
What's your view?
No one's not a huge fan of Ronaldo or Messi. Ronaldo is not the greatest player of all time.
Who is then?
I'm going to say his mate here. And the reason I'd say that, you're talking about is the difference of type of goals. You can score different goals. It doesn't matter how a ball goes in the net. It doesn't matter if one was a head or someone does a free. It doesn't matter. Messi's got a better goal record than Ronaldo. Messi is also a playmaker. Messi can run a game. Ronaldo can't do that. Again, not a criticism. But there's no way in the world he's the greatest player of all time. You talk about who would you want coming off the bench. Messi scored double the amount of goals coming from the bench than Ronaldo's ever scored. So that's just a ridiculous thing that you've just said then in terms of who would I want coming from the bench because he can score different types of goals. It doesn't matter. Even if Messi just scores them over his left foot, it's who's got more chance of scoring from the bench. And the stats prove that Messi coming from the bench scores more goals than Ronaldo. So, I mean, two absolutely, as I said, wonderful players. But what Ronaldo does is, and all the attributes you've just mentioned in terms of heading, striking, free kicks and all that, I totally agree. In terms of a complete player and doing things maybe Messi couldn't, in terms of the weak foot or in the air. But Messi, as a player, can take you to a place where you can't actually believe what you're seeing. What Ronaldo does, he does things that other players can do. So you see someone score a great header, you've seen that before, running, free kicks, all those things. Messi can do things that we've never seen before and can also, as I said, actually the assists and running a game from that position. And yes, it's close and there's always that big debate, but in terms of the goal scoring, that is not right. And I think that's a little bit, there's been a lot of fanfare with United in terms of ex-players. I think you just got a little bit carried away there.
I don't think you can say, I think you've got carried away with saying there's no way you can say he's the greatest player of all time. It's definitely Messi, because there are a lot of
You're
people...
using goals as your... No. He hasn't scored more goals than Messi.
There are a lot of people who believe Ronaldo is, there are a lot of people who believe Messi is. I would never say someone who chose Messi is wrong. That's their opinion. I just thought this morning, if you sort of said to me, define greatness, which player would you bring off the bench if you could choose any player from history to win you a football match with 10 minutes to go? I would choose Ronaldo.